What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. We need to have a discussion. What transpired on Sunday night at the end of WWE Evolution? Naomi cashes in the Money in the Bank contract that she won um, in the Money in the Bank ladder match back in June. So she didn't hold on to it for a long time, and that's been kind of a one of those things with the women's briefcase. There hasn't really been long tenured briefcase holders outside of Carmella and Tiffany Stratton, who cashed in earlier this year. I mean, somebody's gonna have to go check this. Like, this might be the first time we've had two Money in the Bank cash-ins for the women in the same year since that briefcase came into existence for the women. But I was thinking about this. Given the unpredictability and the fact that nobody, and I mean nobody, people might have been calling for it, but nobody expected Naomi to get involved in that main event between Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. A lot of people thought that this was going to be a straight match. Rhea might win the championship. Io might retain. How are they going to get out of this? Because there's a dilemma here. Like, some people are going to be pissed off. And Naomi comes out there in the last minute of that match and steals. Literally, it's the female heist of the century. I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. It's literally the women's heist of the century. Like, basically stealing everything at the end of the biggest the best women's show, only the second reiteration of this. But to me, this is one of the greatest cash-ins of all time. And I mean, you could argue me until you like. Obviously, I think the cream of the crop is going to be Seth Rollins at WrestleMania because of what that was. It was the first time it ever happened. It was in the main event. It closed the show. It was a big deal. Obviously, Damian Priest, had a very recent cash in at WrestleMania 40 to start off the show. And it was clear it was a really well executed cash. And by the way, Triple H, for all the shit that he gets about and what we talked about him hating the money, he's booked some pretty damn good cash ins. Outside of that Austin Theory one, he's booked some pretty damn good cash ins. The Drew one, you could probably say, yeah, the men really haven't necessarily been nailed. But a lot of them were more storyline driven. But the women's cash-ins, he has nailed since he took over. Obviously, Liv Morgan was before him, and that was literally same night, same deal. But then Io, her cash-in was great. Last year, Tiffany Stratton won the briefcase. She obviously cashed in earlier this year, and then Naomi. This is, like I said, I think it's the biggest women's cash-in. It's the best women's cash-in of all time. It's right up there as one of the best cash-ins, period. Considering, where it was, who it was for, what it did, and how it completely shook up the women's division. And above all else, was as shocking as any cash-in as I can remember. Because listen, Seth, we knew, Seth was shocking, but we kind of knew in the back of our minds, Brock, there was stuff going on with Brock Lesnar going into that show that, obviously the first cash in with Edge is always going to hold a place near, but it's just like nobody saw that coming. Nobody even forecasted it. Naomi hadn't even hinted at going after the women's division, the women's world championship. She had been deadly focused on, the SmackDown side of things with Jade Cargill, and you thought, yeah, maybe that's going to happen. And then it didn't. And, however this was called out, this was booked fucking brilliantly. Come in after a 25-minute match, an epic classic. Everybody's going crazy. She's even selling the effects of going through a table earlier in the night. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was a masterclass. And it's easily the best women's cash-in of all time. There's not a lot to go off of there. But it's definitely the best women's cash-in of all time. And like I said, I'd put it right up there with just about any of the men that you could possibly have. Because really, the one that stands dead clear in my mind in terms of, unpredictability, shocking moment on a big stage, Seth is absolutely it. Seth Rollins, that may never get topped, ever. Because like I said, it was a landmark moment, first ever at WrestleMania, main event. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns are there, and it's the first time it was ever a triple threat. That's the other thing. This had parallels to a lot of what happened on that moment 10 years ago at WrestleMania, which is insane to think about. Becomes a triple threat. That's the first time that's ever happened in the iteration of the women. Most of these cash-ins have happened after matches. So for this to be a triple threat, to be in the main event of a bit of effectively, like, if it would have been built better, this could have been the women's equivalent of WrestleMania. It's the main event. It closes out the show. It's a deserving star who is, been there. So I said it before earlier on the channel, that nobody deserves this more than Trinity Fatu Naomi. That woman has busted her ass for a decade plus to get to this point. So I think that's another reason why I'm thinking so highly of this thing. It's just like nobody expected it, man. I always pop for a good cash in. I will always pop in for a good cash in. But this was not on my bingo card. Everybody, including me, thought that this was happening at SummerSlam. And it was going to be a storyline driven moment. It was going to be very predictable. She was going to screw over Jade, ruin her moment. And she comes in and ruins a moment of the two best women in this division having an epic classic. And, she takes over the Raw women's division as the women's world champion. And it's going to be fascinating to see how her title run is going to be booked moving forward because, man, the cash in will always stick, but now it's got to be about, okay, sticking the landing in terms of how you book this title run. And Naomi's been killing it as a heel. Now she's the champion. Let's just hope to God that, Triple H has not booked his women's champions very well, very recently. So let's hope that this is actually a really good title run for Naomi. And like I said, there's still a lot to figure out in terms of what happens to the women's division moving forward, because everybody just assumes Jade Cargill is done with Naomi after this happened. Everybody's like, Jade's got a guaranteed women's championship match. It's going to be on SmackDown. It's going to be against Tiffany Stratton. Does that still happen? Or does she go face Naomi and, have the match at SummerSlam? We do this again. And, maybe that's what they do. I have no idea. But in terms of this particular moment, and please, like throughout this video, and I should have mentioned this off the top, get at me in the comments. Do you think that this has an argument? Number one. And number two, if not Seth, what's your favorite cash-in of all time? Some people will probably say Dolph Ziggler because of that crowd, because that was a great moment. Listen, I thought Miz was a great moment too. Like I growing up, I like, obviously, I love Miz being a Cleveland guy, and, it was cool to see him get that win. CM Punk, both of his cash-ins were great. I could keep going, like, Dean Ambrose when before he was John Moxley, like that cash in at 2016, same night at Money in the Bank to close out that show. There's a lot of them, man. Let me actually do this real quick, like to actually just sort of illustrate how just crazy this. So on the men's side, obviously Edge, he was successful. Rob Van Dam was successful. Edge was successful again. CM Punk 2 years in a row. Jack Swagger was kind of underwhelming. Kane, Miz, Daniel Bryan cashed in for the World Heavyweight title. Alberto Del Rio, that was to close the SummerSlam. Dolph Ziggler, as I mentioned. John Cena failed. Damian Sandow failed. Randy Orton, I was there for that. That was a shocking moment, even though we all expected it to happen. Seth Rollins, as I obviously mentioned, maybe the greatest cash-in ever. Sheamus, that was to get them out of a really bad situation. Dean Ambrose, Baron Corbin, that was a disaster. Braun Strowman, Brock Lesnar, then, Otis obviously giving it up to Miz. He had another cash-in. Then you had Big E. That was a great cash-in, even though they completely telegraphed that. Austin Theory obviously failed. And then Damian Priest. And then, Drew McIntyre failed in 2024. And we'll see what happens. Big picture, man. We'll see what happens with Seth Rollins in this briefcase with his potential second cash-in. Does it go to somebody else? And then in terms of the women, Carmella, Alexa Bliss, and then Bayley cashed in. Asuka didn't even really cash in. That was one of the more lame ones. Nikki ASH, Liv Morgan, Io Sky, and then obviously Tiffany Stratton recently. So I just listed them all off for you guys. Get at me in the comments. Tell me what you think is your favorite cash-in of all time. Obviously, the popular pick is going to be Seth Rollins from Mania 31, but we'll have to debate this until we're blue in the face. But to me, man, like I said, for what it meant, how it closed out the show was a spectacular show. And for who it was for, this is one of the best cash-ins of all time. I think there's definitely a compelling argument for it. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys soon. We'll have a lot more coming on the channel. I appreciate the support. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.